or what's left of it, looks as barren as the winter landscape. Some might think that my story began with the stranger, but in truth, it began long before I met him, back on a balmy June day 8 years ago, when Ellison, not yet my wife, went home to Oregon to see her father. This is strangely ironic to me because it all began on a perfect day. And here it ends, on the worst of days. I should say begins to end, because if the stranger is right, and I've learned that he's always right, I have just 6 more days to live. 6 days that I will live out alone, not because I want to, but because it's the right thing to do. Perhaps my loneliness is my penance. I hope God will see it that way, because there is not enough time to heal 2 hearts. There is not enough time to make right one broken promise. There is only time to remember what once was and should still be. My thoughts wander first to the stranger, then further back 8 years to when Ellison went home to her father. Back to the beginning of my story. Back to a perfect day. Chapter 1. 8 years earlier, July 10th, 1992, Medford, Oregon. Ellison Phelps closed her eyes as she rocked in the saddle to the swing of her Morgan's gait. She rode with her father, Carson, who had grown quiet in the last hour, and the only sound they contributed to the mountain was the steady clop of hooves, the sharp metallic click of horseshoe against rock, and the creaking of leather. The trail they climbed was beaten and as familiar to the horses as to the riders. Without coaxing, they plodded along, scaling the top of a ridge that broke along a line of aspen and cedar. It was the hour before twilight, and the setting sun tinged the edges of the ragged peaks in pink and sage. The pinking hour, Ellison always called it. Ellison shouted back to her father, "It's been too long since we've gone riding together. When was the last time?" "Been 2 summers," her father said without hesitation. "Let's stop up ahead and let the horses rest." She rode 30 more yards to a small clearing, then pulled back the reins. "Whoa, Dolly!" She leaned forward and rubbed Dolly's neck above the shoulder. The bay was damp with sweat from their ride. Her father tapped his horse's flanks with his stirrups and moved up alongside Ellison. "Is this okay?" she asked. He glanced around. "Yeah, it's perfect." They had stopped on a ridge overlooking the lush velvet lap of the Rogue Valley. God's backyard, her father called this country, and as a child and full of faith, she had fully expected to run into God some day out wandering his back 40. To some of Ellison's friends at college, this expansive wilderness would have been a frightening place, but to her it was safe and nurturing, a place she could run to when the world outside became too complex. It was a place that had opened its arms to her when her mother, who had no business dying, died out of turn. In such country it was possible to believe that no one ever really died. They just came here. They dismounted, and Carson took the horse's reins and led them over to a blue spruce, where he tethered the straps to one of its limbs. He took from his saddlebag a small knapsack, then found a flat-topped granite boulder, half buried in the mountainside, and brushed the dirt from it with his hands. "Come sit with me, girlie." Ellison smiled. She was 24 years old and would forever be girlie. She walked over and sat down next to him. She pulled her knees up against her chest, wrapping her arms around her legs. From where they sat, the only sign of man's trespass was 400 yards below them, only visible through the thick foliage to someone who knew what they were looking for, the weathered obelisks and crosses of an overgrown pioneer cemetery, choked and dying itself. Ellison, like her father, had been raised in this country, and while she had left it behind for school, he belonged to it still and always would. He owned more than 1,000 acres of the raw land, but she